Bear had been asked to leave 2 training programs before he was 2 years old. The first program cited impulse control challenges. The second was more direct. The trainer, a patient woman with 20 years of experience, told his previous owner that Bear was not untrainable, but that he had a specific relationship with external authority that required a handler willing to negotiate rather than direct. The previous owner did not want to negotiate with the dog. The rescue organization placed him with Melissa 6 months after that assessment. Melissa was a 43-year-old landscape architect who worked with difficult clients for a living and found the concept of negotiation familiar. She also had 2 daughters, 11 and 14, and a property backing up to a state forest that needed someone with an opinion about its perimeter. Bear, a medium-sized mixed breed with the coat of a border collie and the frame of something that hadn't quite decided what it wanted to be, moved into her home and immediately assessed it with the thoroughness of a new employee on their first week. He was not difficult. He was specific. He had rules he followed and rules he wouldn't, and the difference, Melissa found, was not arbitrary. When he wouldn't do something, there was generally a reason. On a trail in October, the reason was the trail itself. Subscribe so you don't miss the moment the ground moves. The trail was one they'd hiked 8 or 9 times, a 4-mile loop through state forest land. Nothing technical, a regular Saturday morning. Melissa's older daughter, Phoebe, was with her. Bear was on a long lead, about 1.5 miles in, at a section of trail that ran along the ridge line above a small creek drainage. Bear stopped, not slowing, stopped. He planted himself on the trail and would not move forward. Melissa knew his tells. She knew the difference between "I'm being difficult" and "I have information." She stood still for a moment and looked ahead. The trail looked normal. The surface looked normal. The ridgeline looked the way it always looked. She tried the forward command. He sat. She tried the treat. He took it and sat. She tried stepping forward herself. He stepped in front of her, body sideways, blocking. 11 minutes. They stood on that trail for 11 minutes while Melissa cycled through every approach she had. Bear didn't move. Then, with no sound she could register beforehand, a section of the trail approximately 15 feet ahead of her shifted. Not dramatically, not a collapse. A settling, a slow, dry land subsidence of a section of trail where a buried root system had been weakening the slope for months. It settled approximately 14 inches into the hillside, exposing a drop and a gap that would have been, the park ranger who came said later, looking at the gap, a serious fall on that grade. Phoebe grabbed Melissa's arm. Bear walked forward to the edge of the new gap, looked at it, and came back to Melissa and sat down. The ranger said the subsidence pattern suggested the root failure had been developing for several weeks. The smell of changing soil chemistry and settling moisture was within range of what a dog's olfactory system could detect. Bear had been smelling it from 15 feet away, on a trail he'd hiked before. The moment the chemistry crossed a threshold he recognized as wrong. Has a dog ever refused to move somewhere that turned out to be dangerous? Tell us in the comments. Instinct is older than training. Melissa filed a trail report with the state park's office. The section was closed for assessment and repair. They found additional instability along the 20-foot stretch that the original gap hadn't revealed. Bear completed his third training program the following spring. He passed everything except the unconditional recall, which Melissa had decided she no longer required of him. The trainer said, "You're letting him override you." Melissa said, "Sometimes he's right." The trainer looked at her for a moment, then looked at Bear. Then she said, "Fair enough." Subscribe. The ones who wouldn't listen sometimes had the best reasons.